Hi everybody, this is Bob at the Open Scroll. I just produced an interactive study on Daniel chapters 7 through 12, and it's not the biggest one that I've done, but it's big enough and important enough where I wanted to put up a video to give some of you a little bit of a leg up on what's going on here, because you won't be able to see it all on your screen all at one time as I describe it. So I'll show you how to access that so you can begin to appreciate what the author of the scriptures has put in there. We've got a pretty large monitor that I'm recording this from. It's a 1920 pixel wide by 1200 tall, and it's able to tilt or swivel and rotate, so I can turn it 90 degrees into a portrait mode. Typically everybody's monitor is in a landscape mode. That's the way videos are, but it's not so good for documents, and especially not so good for tall interactive presentations. I'll show you the monitor I'm using. It's this Dell, and here it is set up in the big tall portrait mode, and it helps a lot. If you don't have something like that, it's a little bit of a handicap, but you can make do, and watching this video will help you with that. If you don't understand what the structures are, I've got this page on the Open Scroll site called Bible Code Revelations, Thematic Patterns, Expose Riddles. And I've got a couple of videos that I made to walk you through what that's like, and a fair amount of description there with a little bit of history. And links at the bottom. You'll see I've put up Daniel chapters 7 through 12. And I used to have up here a whole bunch of individual chapters and sections, but I took all those out, replacing them with what I've got in Daniel, this one big file. And this is what it looks like. You'll see from the size of the scroll bar over here that there's a lot of height to it, quite a few lines. And you'll notice first off that I've got bold at the beginning of each of the chapters. So here's chapter 7, chapter 8, chapter 9, and chapter 10. Chapter 11 starts here in the middle of this line, and then there's chapter 12. You'll notice that a lot of chapter 11 isn't included. I referenced that I've skipped over verses 3 through 26 because it's not pertinent for the structure that I've got here. I've got the latter part of 11, and that's useful, but the rest of it, for saving space here, I've just eliminated. Now, in the basic structure of this section, chapter 7 is kind of a standalone, but yet it still relates very closely to chapter 8. So you'll see there's no bar spanning them. They're not part of the same structure. But these bars over on the left indicate the largest scale structural units. So I've got 7 as a whole structural unit, I've got 8 as a structural unit, and when it comes to 9 through 12, they're a single unit. So this one bar spans all of them. Now I'm going to reduce the text size here. In your browser you can choose to change the zoom level, so I'm going to make this very small, and you'll notice that the bars get a little bit wonky. So I refresh the page and the bars start to behave themselves. So now it's really tiny, but most of it fits on there. This over here, Daniel 7, next one down, Daniel 8, and then we've got, for one unit, chapters 9 through 12. And if I go on to the next bar, it'll show you the next divisions, and 9 through 12 breaks into 2. And the way this works is that 9 through 12 is a division where the first part is repeated in the second. It's division or simple repetition. And we know that to be the case because we can compare the themes, and also the patterns of the subdivisions align also. And then the further breakdown is that the structures correspond in 3 parts. This is the first part, A to A prime. As I move the mouse cursor down to the next bar, and I'm in the 3rd column of bars. It's a gray bar, and I just moved the cursor down to highlight the next ones in sequence. So this would be a B prime, a B and B prime, and we've got a C and C prime. And we're going to see that thematically they match up, and there's further subdivisions where the structures compare. The patterns are the same, and that's how we know that it's being repeated. So I'm going to make this regular size by Control 0, F5 to refresh it. And I'm just going to walk through a little bit of the commentary that I've put in. And commentary is indicated with the bars where there's a yellow line, and in the text where it's underlined in yellow. And you'll notice that the mouse cursor is usually an arrow, and then when I hover over a line that's got a comment window attached to it, it turns to a hand. And it's the same thing with the bars. It's typically an arrow, and then it turns to a hand when you're over a bar. So that means it's a link, it's active, and you click on it. So it brings up this commentary window. You can drag it around to put it wherever you like. I clicked on the one over the entire chapter 7. The basic design of the 7th chapter is similar to the 8th. Reference to the vision recorded in chapter 7 is made in that first verse of chapter 8. You'll notice here it says, "In the 3rd year of the reign of Belshazzar, the king, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, subsequent to the one which appeared to me previously." Which vision? The one from chapter 7. The subjects of both of these chapters are closely related. The visions are similar. Chapter 7 and 8 both begin with a dating and summary. So you'll notice here in verse 1 of chapter 7, the dating is in the 1st year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon. And in the first verse of chapter 8, the dating is that it's in the 3rd year of the reign of Belshazzar the king. When you close this window and hover over this bar, 7.1, you'll see that I've got a corresponding highlighting going on 8.1 to indicate that they have a relationship, that they're linked. The remainder of the 7th chapter, I'm reading in the commentary window again, divides in 2, with the themes of the first repeating in the 2nd part. After closing this commentary window, hover your mouse cursor over the 2nd column of bars to see these divisions. Then hover over those to their right and over the lines of text. The remainder of the 8th chapter is divided in 3, with the first repeating in the 2nd and 3rd parts, ABC, A prime, B prime, C prime. Note that on this level, the 8th has one more division than the 7th. On the next level of structure, the divisions of chapter 7 subdivide in 3 parts. The second of the 2nd is doubled. The divisions of chapter 8 subdivide into 4 parts. Note that this level also finds the 8th with one more division than the 7th, A, B, C, D, A prime, B prime, C prime, D prime. Another point of comparison is in how both chapters feature 7-part repetitions in the detailed descriptions of the visions. In chapter 7, the elements I labeled B and B prime above are 7-fold. In chapter 8, the 7 themes of verses 3 and 4 are repeated in verses 5 to 8a, line for line. I'm going to close this window. I'm going to illustrate how you can explore to validate those things I was just talking about. So here I hover over this first bar, and it highlights down below in chapter 8 and shows you that these are similar. Then I move down, and I don't highlight anything down below here because they're not really a direct match in chapter 8. So I'm going to deal with chapter 7 independently. I mentioned that there's twofold division when you go into this third column level, threefold division, A, B, C. So what you'll find is that the highlighted parts here, which is verses 2 through 6 and verses 16 through 18, are matched in the theme. And you can explore those to see exactly how that works. Same thing here, and the same thing here. Now you'll notice something interesting. Here I've got one bar, and here I've actually got two bars, because the content that's in this is actually doubled. The content here is repeated there, and then a third time there. And these two parts down below are very directly related. They also directly correspond to this section up here. And to explore that, you hover over this bar, and it shows you the corresponding in the blue, verses 19 and 20, and also 23 through 25. And then if I move down to the bar below it, you'll see that it goes to verse 21 and then 25b through 27. And if you take your time and you look at the themes, you read through each one, you'll see exactly how they correspond. And the highlighting will help you keep track of where to look and what things are aligned. And as you go back and forth between them, you can see that there's a very direct correspondence. Now, I'm mentioning here that there's a secondary level of correspondence to verses 16 through 18. And you'll notice that those are very, very similar, and there's a definite relationship there. But in the thematic symmetry on the next level, it's actually kind of crossing over outside it. And this is not uncommon. And this kind of relationship is a way of emphasizing certain aspects, drawing our attention and emphasizing, which is something that when you're praying and considering the meaning of these things, ask the Lord to show you what it means. And oftentimes He will. He'll give you special insight into why He's done these things the way that He has. If I click on this one, it brings up another window, and I give specific commentary relative to these sections. I'm not going to go through that and read it with you now, but I will recommend that you do so. Now, in relationship to the level of structure that deals with the lines, if I hover over verse 7a, you'll see 19 and 23 highlighted. And then if I go down a line, the next lines highlight, down a line, the next lines highlight, down a line, the next lines highlight. So there's 4 parts, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you could say that these correspond in A, B, C, D, A prime, B prime, C prime, D prime, and so on. This is a remarkable correspondence. Now if I keep going down, you'll notice, there's a 5th, a 6th, and a 7th with regard to verses 7 through 14 and verses 23 through 27. And it looks like it stalls because the last 3 are actually corresponding to a single unit in this section here. So there's another anomaly, and I've put a yellow line in front of verse 21 to point that out. Verse 21 and 22, which by the way are very special verse number combinations that Aaron and I continually run into. Chapter 8, I assume that you've already looked at the commentary that's in chapter 7. I've got a yellow highlighting on verse 2. I'm going to read that. The second verse of Daniel 8 represents the first of 4 elements in a set that is repeated 3 times. This can be seen as you study the highlighting that froze when this comment window opened. Now every time you close a window, it's going to jump back up to the top. So I scroll back down, and hovering over 2, you'll see 15 through 19 is highlighted. And Chapter 8 is very interestingly divided up. This first part is kind of an independent introduction. It matches up with 7:1 basically. And then the rest of 8 divides like this. And I've got all 3 of these other bars highlighted in blue. They're connected. And the reason why is because there's 3 blocks that are being repeated. And the next level, I've got 1, or A, and you'll see all 3 of them. And then as I go down to the next bar, you'll see it shift. And so there's the B elements, all 3 of them. And as I go down to the next bar, there's the C elements, all 3 of them, all in order. And then the D element, all in order. And if you explore these, you'll see that the themes definitely do match. And it validates that Chapter 8 verses verse 2 to the end definitely divide into 3, and it's a repetition, a 3-fold repetition. Sometimes there's further division here. You'll see that this B section is divided in 2 of the sections, in the first one and the second. So if I hover over the first bar, you'll see it matches up to the first bar, verse 20. If I move down to the next bar, you'll see it shift to verse 21. So it's another A prime B prime comparison there. And inside this section of verses 3 through 8a, if I hover my mouse over the lines, we'll see that we've got 1, 2, 3, and then we've got a bar, 4th element, and 5, 6, 7. So this is a 7-fold repetition. Verses 3 and 4 are repeated in 5 through 8a. And some of these are pretty obvious. When I hover over this bar, you'll see that it's expanded here. This is about the ram and his budding. And I've divided this out because there's another structure here. There's AB and A prime B prime again. It's an alternation or a simple repetition in 2 parts. I put a bar there to indicate that this is one unit that basically matches up to this line, and then this is a second line, or a second section that repeats what's in this line. So this line is repeated here, and it's repeated here, and the way it's repeated is with this structure. So this corresponds to this, but this is doubled. It appears here and here. It appears in 2 lines that relate in this way. So I break these out where there's further structure that I perceive, and where I don't perceive a division in it, I just put a single line. If a line corresponds to a section that's broken out more, I'll put a bar in front of it. So this part here is repeated here. All 7 elements are repeated here. Now when we get down to verse 21, of course, it's just a single line that corresponds to it. And verse 20 corresponds to what's above. And it's a beautiful symmetrical relationship there. Now in this first part, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to click on this link, and I put a commentary on 2 and we looked at that, and now I've got a commentary on this corresponding verses 15 through 19. And I talk about the structural relationships and coach you a little bit more on how to see what's going on there. I'm going to close that and scroll back down. Verses 15 and 16 are basically repeated in 17 and 18, and when I hover over the lines you'll see that I've got multiple coloring going on, and I'll call attention first to the chiasm that exists in verses 15 and 16. And a chiasmus is related to the letter chi, which is an X. It crosses over, so it's an ABBA. It's like a reflection or an introversion. And so when you hover your mouse, A and B and B. The theme of A is repeated in this fourth line, so I call that A prime. The theme of the second one, B, is repeated in this, and I call that B prime because it matches the theme of B. So in this bottom part, instead of being a introversion, it's a simple repetition or an alternation. So we've got a number of things going on here. We've got, well, I'll leave it to you. You can explore that further. Some of these things are very subtle, some of them are obvious, but the structures are there. It's very intricate. There's several levels, and the reason is, bottom line, not just to entertain us or give us something to give us word puzzles, it's to instruct us. Now when I come down to this section, obviously this is the bulk of the content. It's one of the larger sections on both sides. You'll see here it's divided into 2 parts, and if I start up at the top and call this A, it's going to match down there, and so again we've got an introversion. First part, the second part is repeated out of order. So the theme of this is the broken horn. Now in this section, this is of course where the bulk of that exists, and here again we've got a 2-part division in both ends, and this one is an alternation in order, or a repetition in order. It's not a chiasm. And as we go further in, we see again we've got the same thing. AB, A prime, B prime. And again, some of these are really obvious. It's a beautiful thing. In this section here, you'll notice as I drill in on the line level, once again we've got the same structure. AB, A prime, B prime. Now as I drill in on this next one, it's divided into 2 parts, and now here we have a chiasm. We've got the first part up to the top here corresponding to the second part down below, so it's A, B, B, A. See how that works? As I move my mouse cursor up and down. Now as I drill in on this one, we've got 2 parts, and these correspond in an AB, A prime, B prime, and on the level of the lines, this is in 3 parts, ABC, ABC. And down below corresponds like this. Down here, we've got a simple chiasm. So once again, this part is repeated down here, and as we resolve further to the level of the lines, it's repeated in inverse order. So we've got quite a combination going. It's complex. It certainly makes it a challenge to analyze the structure. One of the biggest challenges in coming up with these is determining exactly where the line breaks are, because it's certainly not on a verse-by-verse basis. Sometimes multiple verses are on a single line. Sometimes a single line is broken out into 3, 4, 5, 6 different lines. Verse 27 is in 4 parts, and it matches each one of these sections. Now when it comes to chapter 9, 9 is going to correspond to 10 through 12, like I showed earlier. And now on this scale, you can see this first part where 9, 1, and 2 correspond to chapter 10, verse 1. 10, verse 1 is all on one line, and 9 is broken out. 9, 1, and 2 are broken out. And I'm going to click on the yellow bar to bring up the commentary window. The chapters numbered 9 through 12 may be considered as a single two-fold unit. This design appears when the organization of the themes of chapter 9 are recognized in chapters 10 through 12. Each of those two divisions is further divided in 3. This particular unit, 9 verses 1 and 2, is the A of an ABC, A prime, B prime, C prime construction, where the companion A is 10 verse 1. What Daniel observed in the books is probably what we know as Jeremiah 29 verse 10. So that commentary relates to the actual content. There's a reference being made. And so you'll see these commentary windows aren't just descriptive of the structure itself. A lot of these will relate to insights about the text. So I closed the window and it scrolled all the way back up. Now, if you don't want the windows to scroll back up every time, you don't have to close them to open another. I'll illustrate that here. I've got it open, and I'm going to click on another bar. You'll see the commentary changes. The highlighting changes also to reflect the content where I've clicked. All the companions on any bar that I've clicked or any line that I've clicked will freeze in the highlighting. So if you just want to go through the commentary without jumping around, you can certainly do that. Alternately, you can open up a second window. If you've got 2 monitors, you can open up a window, or even if you've got a big monitor, you can open them up side by side in the same. And for example, I'll open up another window here for Daniel chapter 7 through 12. Separate that out and line that up over there. So if you've got a big monitor, you can keep one open in order to keep the commentary window open, and then in the other window you can go through and check out your highlighting. Now sometimes you'll notice that, for example, there's a big space between the bars, and it's a little bit fussy. I made the bars thinner so I could fit more in a window for people with smaller monitors and so on. It's very helpful. One of the drawbacks is that it will sometimes permit these lines. So a couple ways to deal with that. Typically, making the window wider will make the lines go away. There. So now the bars fit nice and tightly. Scroll all the way down. All the bars are behaving themselves nicely. But if you're full screen and that happens, you can drag your window down, make it less than full screen, and refresh the page. And sometimes the bars will automatically behave themselves at the reduced width. Sometimes after refreshing the page the bars still have a gap, but since it's less than full screen, you can drag the window wider until they start to behave themselves again. So it's a little bit fussy. In order to focus on the things that you really want to see, you might have to explore your options a little bit, play around with it to find yourself able to focus intently without distraction on the things that you want to see. I like to have all my mental bandwidth able to be focused, so I don't like distractions. Life is hard enough. These things are complicated enough, and I need all the help I can get, so I fuss around until the display is just exactly what I want it to be, and then I get all the benefit. Alright, so refresh this window again. Alright, so in Chapter 9, you'll notice that this first part here is divided into two, verse 1 and then verse 2. The first line of verse 1 matches this first line of 2, second to the second, and then I've got a bar on the third because in the second division here it's got more content that subdivides further, and I've got that broken out like this. You'll see the number of the years is 70 years. Alright, so verses 3 to 21a match up to 2 and 3 of chapter 10. As I go into the next level, the fourth column of bars, the black bars here, you'll notice that these two correspond. So this section up on top is divided in two. One corresponds to the other. And you'll notice down here that the bars aren't highlighted to match up here. So these bars down here are indicating that these two blocks down here repeat, and the lines repeat in this way. So the themes are pretty evident once you become familiar with the content of these two sections, so they definitely match. But the more interesting part is up here at the top in Daniel 9. And there's some very interesting stuff. And you'll want to explore what I've got in these commentary windows here in Daniel 9. This is good stuff. So the way that it's repeated, when I go to the fifth column, you'll see that there's once again a chiasm. So this first part, 3 through 14, is going to be repeated in 5 through 21, and it's going to repeat in a twofold division in a chiasm. So this 3 and 4a match up to 20 and 21a, and then 4b through 19 or through 14 match up to 15 through 19. When I go to the next division up here, we'll see once again the bars up here aren't matching up to the bars down there. So what we've got is just an indication that up here these are going to be a chiasm up on top, but now you see I've got green highlighting down to the bottom on those lines. So what I'm showing you is that there is a relationship between the lines, but it's kind of a secondary relationship. I use blue to indicate primary relationships and then green to indicate other somewhat lesser correspondences. Where this up at the top is a chiasm, we've got a different kind of an arrangement down at the bottom. So as I go down here, you'll see I've got the green correspondence to indicate the same thing I was indicating earlier. So this is a chiasm down here, and it's a chiasm up here, but the way that they correspond is very interesting. So I covered the A sections. Now I'm going to cover the B sections. So these are divided in two, and these do correspond in A, B, A prime, B prime. So now we're going to consider these two sections, and you'll notice up top in the next level here I've got 3 bars, and I've only got 2 down at the bottom. The way they correspond, you can see the themes, and there's a very obvious correspondence in the themes, but on this level of division now it's going to be kind of a self-contained deal. And I've got 3 bars here. What we're going to see is this block is going to be repeated here and here, and that's indicated on the next level of division, where now we've got a AB, A prime, B prime. On this level I've got another commentary window that you can look at, but once again this indicates that this block is repeated here, and if you hover over the lines you'll see it's a chiasm. So down in this section here, this block is repeated here, 15 is repeated in 16, and it's repeated in a standard simple repetition or alternation. So that pretty much covers that section. Hopefully you're catching on to how this works. Now in this next part, it's got the most interesting stuff going on. I'm going to see if I can fit all that on screen here. No, I can't, so I'm going to shrink it down a little bit. Control minus F5 to refresh it. Alrighty, should all fit now. I don't know if you can see this or not, but in order to see it all on screen in a practical way, this is really the only way I can do it. When you do it, once you've seen the corresponding sections, when you want to actually read it, you can just increase the text size to whatever's comfortable for you, and then if you click on one, the highlighting will freeze, so you're free to move your mouse around and scroll up and down so you can compare everything. It's one of the great benefits of being able to freeze frame with the commentary windows. So verse 22 through 27 of chapter 9 corresponds to chapter 10 verse 9 through the end of 12. Doesn't quite all fit on screen here. You'll see that this first part matches up to this first part, and then the second part matches up to the second part, which is all of chapter 12. So this again has further subdivisions, and it's matched on an A, B, A prime, B prime. And then further we see this shaken out, and I'm going to click on that and I'm going to show you as I scroll down. It goes all the way down to the bottom. The unit composed of chapter 9 verses 22 and 23 is paired with 9:25a in the near context. See that right here. But the pairing with the more remote passage of 10:9 through 11:2a is of even greater interest. That's this section right here. These compare as one repeats the other twice, and that's what's indicated on this next level. In both of those repetitions, the 3 subdivisions are repeated in order. And you'll see that here on this level with the black bars. Verse 22, they'll match up with these bars right here. See the note on chapter 10 verses 9 through 14 for more commentary on the local design. So I point you in the commentary window to more help, which is going to be on this bar here. So when I close that and refresh it, I'm going to scroll down to chapter 12 and I'm going to show you the highlighting. On this level of the bars right here, it gets very interesting. So I'm going to click one and freeze it. This commentary on this level and all the commentary in chapter 12 is something you'll want to explore because there's some really useful stuff. Aaron and I have been looking forward to getting to the bottom line on this stuff because the Lord indicated to us that there are some secrets bound up in there that have to do with the time reset. I mentioned here that there are 6 sets that are linked together in this collection, and I'm going to count those with you. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the blue one up at the top there, 6 in the green. And then related to that, we've got these others, because each one of these is part of a twofold division. And I'm going to click on this one to indicate that. And I'm going to click back on this one and back on this one, and you'll see as you go back and forth between these sections that are highlighted, it'll show you that there's a consistency to them. You can also, if you've got them up on screen, just hover your mouse back and forth over them and you'll see the highlighting flip. And again, the blue ones are most directly related, and the green are also related, but more in a secondary sense. Well, that's it for this video. Enjoy your exploration.